Welcome everybody to the second NOA Community Call. I'll try to host things for a little bit, but I don't want to dominate the conversation. I'm Wander, in case you can't see who's talking. So we've got a slightly more structured call today in that we've got a couple things that the mod team and the business development team wanted to talk about. But other than that, we have some topics that I think that are probably pretty important for the community to discuss at large, and we're excited to get going with that. So, without further ado, the first topic that we had listed out was DAO structuring and organization. So, is Nick S here today? Doesn't look like he's on the
Hey
call right
guys,
now.
I'm here.
Oh, you are. I see. Okay, I'm sorry. Do you want to talk about the meeting that we have with the firm in a couple weeks here?
Yeah, sure. I can give a quick update. So I had the opportunity to speak with a firm based in the Netherlands that focuses on tax, legal structuring, and sort of DAO advisory services. Seemed very professional. A group, it was about 3 or 4 different people. They have their own technical staff as well to help with, structuring the smart contracts for DAOs as well. So they were interested in chatting with us and helping us sort of refine our vision for what we want to achieve, and are willing to chat with us specifically with the mods to start in the next few weeks, and then hopefully, assuming we want to continue working with them, we can move to a more broad call where the community can engage and sort of listen in and learn more. So, we may speak with a couple other entities as well, but for now, these guys seem pretty interesting, and they're super engaged, and they actually run rocket pool nodes as well. So yeah, excited about it.
Cool. Thanks so much. Yeah, we're all pretty excited about this. The people that knew about this in advance, that would be me and Marceau. I think we're both we're all really interested in this because the opportunity to meet with some people that have experience helping communities like ours to succeed is something that is really rare. It's difficult to find people that make not only a profession out of it, but are good at the grouping of a decentralized group into something that's more formal. One of the things that we've seen lately from the biz dev side of things is that formality and structure are both they're kind of a double-edged sword. So one upside of these things is that they kind of make us more productive, and one downside is that it sort of loses the community feel and the loose knit sort of everybody can contribute as much as they need to or want to element that we have right now. That's inevitable, unfortunately, that in the long run we're going to have to create some sort of structure, but whatever that structure looks like is sort of, different types of DAOs look different. And one of the things that I think that we would really benefit from speaking to some people with experience here about this subject for is the exploration of several different types of organizations. You can go very bureaucratic. You can make teams for everything. You can end up like MakerDAO, who moves slow but does things right. And you can also go with like completely anonymous people, no structure or organization whatsoever. The pirate hacker collective that Flashbots likes to use, that can be very effective as well. But it really, we need to, I think, do some exploration as a community as to what our preferences and goals are. So on that front, before we talk to anybody, I wanted to leave some space here in the call for people to step up and say what they felt like the future of NOAA organization should look like. Anybody want to chat?
Hey, Wander, can you maybe speak to the time frame you're thinking of for this type of structuring? I think in the past there's been comments about preferring to delay kind of any kind of formal structuring or incorporation as long as possible. And maybe this is somewhat independent of that, but I'm assuming this is kind of like a medium time frame type of thing. But is that right, or is this more of an immediate need, do you think?
That a great question, and this may sound like a cop out, but it's not up to me. It's up to everybody. So if everybody thinks that this needs to happen now, then we'll make strides towards it, right? But I can share my personal opinion, which is, yeah, I do think that we should probably delay it until we have a much better idea of what kind of products we want to build and the direction that we want to go in strategically, which is definitely a topic that's going to come up here in a second. And my opinion basically is that if you don't know what, well, this is what James said yesterday, and we were speaking with James from the Ethereum Foundation, and he said something I think really just kind of sums up the whole thing. First, you got to figure out what direction to run in before you run, and that's exactly what we're doing right now. So, yeah, I would
Yeah,
say medium term makes a lot of sense to me, but I'm curious what everybody else's thoughts are on the subject. Anyone
and
else
just
have anything to say?
one more thing to add.
Mm-hmm.
The good thing is with these guys that we're going to chat with is they're not wed to any one approach, and they're very much open to just allowing us to explore all the different directions we may want to.
Mm-hmm.
And if we ended up deciding to go down a more formal structured pathway, they literally told me on the call that that's a multi-month process to make sure you get everything right.
Correct. Yeah.
So it's definitely a more medium term at the minimum if we were to go down that route.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there are different layers of formality too. You can incorporate and be very formal, or you can be non-incorporated and very formal. It's really kind of depends on how the community wants to approach it. So I think we have a lot of options here in front of us, really. Um,
For me, it's mostly that I'm very eager to help out on things, but it's hard to figure out what actually needs to be done and where help is currently already possible.
mm.
So, but yeah.
That's a good point. I think this is one of the reasons that I wanted to bring it up is that I really do think that if we don't do any kind of structure or organization, then that will be a problem all the time. And yeah, Outlaw, we've really appreciated your help with the site so far, and with there does need to be some sort of direction long term there. In order to improve things, we need to have a design. Yeah, just as a slice, as an example, the website we've got it up and running. It looks great. It's a temporary, but in the long run, in order to make something that's a unified design that looks great, we all feel really happy about, it's going to take a huge amount of effort from some centralized design sort of standpoints. Um, I can't do that. I'm not a designer. I wish I could, otherwise I'd help out there. But we needed a way to sort of vote on different designs, or at least like figure out whatever's going on there, how to make decisions, kind of at a broader level. These are all questions that we're kind of asking right now. So I'd love to hear what people's opinions are.
Yeah, so I do think that if you tell the community, hey, it would be awesome if we can go forward with a website design, and well, we have a logo, come up with a couple of proposals, and you have a couple of people that can work on it. I'm pretty sure there's already people in the community that are eager to start working on it.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think they're kind of waiting, like, do we actually? So yeah, it's those kind of things I think that might help if.
Mm-hmm.
I have a quick question. Do you think it makes a difference about what the people that we'll be working with in the coming months and years think would be the best way we should set up our DAO?
That's a great question. And actually, funnily enough, we may have a couple partners here. I see Kind from Obal is here, and I know that there was a couple others that said they were going to try and join, but we can. That's a question that we can certainly start. The biz dev team can start asking people when we meet with them for sure.
Yeah, I think that's a good place to start as well, because we want to make sure that we're not just a great platform for the community, but also for the people that we want to build relationships with, and we want them to trust us with their ETH, right? So that I think would give them a lot of confidence if they're working with a system that they're happy with.
Yeah, well said. That's a great point. I'm trying to keep notes here.
Yeah, just thought I'd say hello because I got name dropped. Hey everyone.
Hello.
Yeah, you can call me Ocean or Kine is probably easier. I'm the CTO and co-founder of Oval, and Oval is basically we build the tech to run validators with groups. So I've been, very fond of the Rocket Pool guys, and we're, trying to make what we build work for Rocket Pool. So when I saw this stuff, set up and spin out, I was keen to kind of keep an eye on it and see, when can we fold into the picture when the time is right. As for structure, I think people are pretty flexible, but I do think what probably helps is having it in writing somewhere public on the internet. Then at least, people can look at it async, and it's if it's on a voice call in Discord, you can't get back to that. But it doesn't really matter how formal it is, really, so long as there's, something a bit in writing in a GitHub or in a README file somewhere, a Notion site somewhere that people can kind of look at.
Yeah, for sure. That's actually something that I've started noticing personally, that we're a little behind on documenting some stuff. That have we've had we spoke with James from the Ethereum Foundation yesterday. That I mentioned that earlier, and that I'm getting a little out of order because I was going to mention this later in the call. But one of the things that he mentioned as a piece of feedback for us was there's a ton of conversations that are going on in the Discord that are really great. They need to be started to be documented somewhere, and I think I agree with that. If we have a lot of really smart people working on some stuff, and we could really use some structure, some way of keeping things a little bit more permanent. And like you said, README files and things like that are really great for that. But at the same time, not everybody's going to go down into it and read it either. So finding a good way of moving forward here is going to be that's going to be really crucial. Anyone else have thoughts?
Mentor was having audio issues. He wasn't.
Oh, Kevster, you're super quiet.
All right, is my audio coming through at all?
Yes, we can hear you now.
There we go. I just switched to my laptop. I just wanted to jump in real quick on your question of how to architecturalize the DAO. Do also keep in mind, like, iteration is good. We don't need to be perfect immediately. And while you do need a direction if you're going to start running, you don't need to know where you're going to end up. And maybe additionally, the RFC has a really cool piece on how to get consensus in groups where they rely on rough consensus instead of like democratic voting, which basically comes down to unless there's someone who cannot live with a decision, you can take a direction so long as there's someone who's willing to pick up the work. And that ends up being very helpful to getting things done, as opposed to getting mired down in trying to get perfect consensus and then not going anywhere.
That's a great point. Do you have those are fantastic things to point out, because really decision making should serve the organization that's trying to be making something happen. Not we should not be serving the decision making process. So actually, so you mentioned a piece. Do you have a link to that? Oh, awesome! I see it.
Put it in general now.
Thank you. Yeah, RFCs are fantastic sources. That's great. Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Well, we'll leave that there for now. And if you think of something to say on the topic of organization, don't hesitate to bring it up, and it's totally fine if it's out of order. Not a big deal. So, but for now, I'll move on, since it doesn't seem like anybody wants to jump up. Go back to my list of things to say here. Okay, so next up, first I brought up the idea of structuring organization. That leads us straight into why we're trying to organize, which is, of course, the short and medium term strategy that we want to focus on. So if everyone saw the I put out a fairly recent. I typed up something that was probably a little bit too long, but it was sort of a summary of the way that some of the biz dev folks have started feeling about our short term plans after meeting with a lot of the other industry players and kind of realizing maybe in the short term what we're trying to create is less advantageous for the ecosystem than we originally thought because it would be so limited. Ultimately, if we put something out on mainnet that is extremely limited, it really only helps us learn how to do something better in the long run. But that can also be accomplished by a testnet development, and that's not something that, if you throw something on mainnet, then we get some minimal benefits, like maybe we could advertise, maybe we could get our name out there, we could say some stuff, but it really it'd have to be so limited just purely because the speed and scope at which we would try to put something out in the short term would have to be very limited just by its nature. It's and the alternative to that is, okay, we sit and we do some deep thinking and heavy development and raise money and put it all towards development and audits and all this stuff, and then we come out with a big protocol, like in a year or two, and that leaves us kind of just sitting around. Not sitting around doing nothing, but that's a very long-term goal to work towards without a lot of near-term progress that we can make outside of just gearing up to do this one huge thing. I think that NOA is a little bit bigger than just one type of protocol or one particular product or one particular initiative. This community is, at least from my perspective, a community of people that wants to do a lot of different things. And I don't think that we should limit ourselves to saying, this is the only kind of thing that we want to do right now. So my feeling, and I think Marceau and Nick and I talked about this, I think we all agree that in the short term, it might be better to kind of leave all of our experimentation surrounding the protocol on the testnet realm, which no one's really started in earnest yet. But when we get to that point, I think it's ultimately probably a little bit more effective to test things on testnet, right? Than it would be to try and put out a very, very limited minimal product. And in the meantime, there are still some things for NOA to accomplish. And one of the big ones that I see is that we can create a certification process, which we would have to do for our protocol regardless. And that certification process can be used for multiple things. One of the big ones that I've noticed when we were talking to some of the potential partners in the industry is that there are, maybe like 24 regular players in the staking infrastructure business. So these are the people behind Lido, the 21 node operators that Lido uses, as well as typical staking firms that you would think of, like Stakefish and Figment. There's really not that many players out there, and that's kind of normal for really any industry. How many people out there make toothpaste? Probably like 20 firms, right? But when it comes to something like Ethereum, decentralization is obviously much better, and we definitely are in a unique position to be able to provide decentralized infrastructure, given that we have a big network of people who are interested and capable of running nodes, but don't necessarily have massive operations like Stakefish and Figment. So one of the things that I was thinking about was, maybe we can leverage our NOA certification process that we need to make anyway. Maybe this can be sort of a good hook to compete to some small extent, not at the exclusion of all of our other efforts, but to some extent competing with the Stakefish and Figment players for space in some of these marketplaces that are coming up. So I'll explain a little bit more. Swell, when we spoke with them, they let us know that one of the designs that they're going with for their network is it's a marketplace of stakers, essentially, where you as a staker, put your Ethereum into the Swell interface and choose a staker, or I'm sorry, choose a validating company or organization or a validator. You get to choose that. You get to say, I like Stakefish, I like Figment, I like NOA. And I think that's a really powerful way for us to pretty much nearly immediately, because some of these protocols haven't really launched yet, but they will in the near future. I think that's a great way for us to nearly immediately get some revenue, start building NOA up, the brand and all that kind of stuff. While I don't think we can. It would be foolish to say that we can't do multiple things at the same time. So my thinking, of this whole situation was, okay, let's put out some early kind of feelers into this territory, get connected with these protocols that are launching, put our names out there, be on the lists, and start taking ETH in and distributing it, getting more comfortable with the way that the NOAA certification process will work, refining it, forging it into something really awesome. And then by the time we've got a protocol out there, it's almost just, second nature. Everybody already knows how it works. It's going to be great. We don't have to refine anything at that point. We've already sort of done the effort. And in the meantime, more ETH into more NOAA node operator hands quickly. So this was the thinking that I was kind of sort of playing around with here a little bit. And I spoke to Marceau and Nick a little bit about this in the past. I think they seem to agree that sounds like a great strategy shift for us. But, this is certainly not a decision that I not only can I not make it for everyone, I don't want to make it for everyone. So I'm going to want to put that idea out there, and I'm curious how everybody feels about it. Do you think this is crazy and dumb and we should just focus on the protocol only, or do we think that this makes sense and is a good way forward?
It sounds pretty good to me. I think it makes sense to get started like this. Like you said, once we start putting the rails in place, then we can.
Yeah. Whack, I think we lost you right at the end there, but I think we got most of it. Yeah. Thanks for the input. Anybody else?
One thing that I don't know, I might express a bit of caution with is I read the original kind of design doc. I think it was maybe a few weeks ago at the time that it was written. But the thing that kind of jumped out to me and scared me a little was let's take custody of people's funds and start staking them and figure out how it's going to work and how it's going to be arranged later. Particularly, I think it was something like, let's just throw a lot of funds in a Gnosis multisig and we'll build around it. My background is I'm kind of ex Consensus, and I would have worked within their tokenization business, and I just want to basically express a little bit of caution, being I would advise having some sort of entity in place, be it even if it's nothing like a Delaware Inc., but just I'll express a little bit of caution for people taking custody of funds, particularly if they're European. I'm from Ireland, and doing that can basically land you in personal liability and hot water. And if you have an entity of any sort, at least your liability is limited. And I just express a little bit of caution in terms of being a bit too kind of act now, figure out the kind of legal structure later. But yeah, I don't know. That's personal experience more than anything.
No, I actually totally agree. And I didn't really make that clear before because I was kind of keeping the topics separate. But that's a great point, and that's a really great bridge across them. We absolutely need to be figuring out the kind of organization that we want to go with before we take any outside funds whatsoever. It's one thing to take donations, and Nick and I are very comfortable taking responsibility for the multi-sig, and just we can just leave it sitting there if we need to from the donation side. But if there's custody of other people's funds that they're expecting to be invested or staked, or something done with them, and then returns are expected, things like that, yeah, 100%. Even from a United States perspective, that's a really great idea to do that, because we have a similar concept with limited liability. And that's so, yeah, we definitely need to figure that out before we move towards any sort of commercial operations whatsoever. I totally agree. Thanks so much for bringing that up, Kind.
Yeah, and,
No
and just
problem.
to
And yeah,
go ahead. Sorry, Ryan.
I was just gonna say, like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And internal funds are much more flexible. So long as you're just not taking an end customer, it's mostly fine. Like if it's all coming from, inside the house, it's normally all good.
Yeah. As far as I know, that's the case as well. I live in the United States, so I think about my legal liabilities in the United States, and I think it's just Nick and I at the moment who are sort of taking responsibility for that. But in the future, we definitely do want to expand the multi-sig as well. The only reason we can't right now is that you would have to go through the somewhat onerous KYC process for the Ethereum Foundation. And what we can do is just expand it after the quadratic funding round is finished, so that we don't have to worry about that. But while that round is still going on for the next few hours here, we needed to keep it a little bit more easily manageable. But actually, I'm on that subject, that is something that I would like to see us do in the near future. Adding people to the multi-sig is probably a really big upgrade for us in terms of the community. It's really straightforward and simple and easy we can do right now. So I'm going to write that one down too. But I want to jump back to Nick. You had something to say?
Yeah, just to jump on the same topic. I've been personally looking through the terms of service and agreements across all of Lido's operators, and they're all over the world, right? But there are a few in the United States, and what I've noticed is that their terms of service are almost identical or very, very similar in many ways. And they're basically offloading all liabilities to the customer. And what they've done is they've built their own custom infrastructure, in almost all cases, outside of maybe Figment, which does custody. But in most cases, their infrastructure is entirely non-custodial on their side. So the user is responsible for depositing, for withdrawing, for all those types of things, and the funds flow into the validators and then flow out, and they can basically wipe their hands clean when it comes to speaking with regulators. And say, no, I am not a money transfer business. I am not any type of business that deals with, any form of money, really. I'm simply a service provider. So I think it's really critical, especially for US-based entities, to be very, very cognizant of this. And I'm hoping once I have an opportunity to work with a law firm on investigating this more deeply, can whatever insights we glean be transferred to either the Rocket Pool team or ourselves when we end up building infrastructure to ensure we are remaining as compliant / just avoiding risk as much as possible.
Mm-hmm. That's a great point. And thanks so much for your research there. That's extremely helpful for NOAA, I think. And even not NOAA, just our NOAA members who are starting businesses. This is pretty crucial information. Like Kind said, Europe has very strict regulation on this front as well. So I know that there's going to be a lot of folks all across the world that are looking to figure out, how do I do this whole thing in a safe way? Because nobody's here to try and mess with people. We're trying to do things in the most transparent and ethical way possible. So, but while at the same time avoiding culpability if something really, really bad happens that we can't control, because that would be ridiculous. So these are some really important topics for us to be exploring in the future. So if anyone has these kinds of legal expertise or knows people that do, I think that NOAA would really benefit from that perspective. We have a few legal contacts on our side. I know Nick has a legal team. I do too. And I've asked them some cursory questions, but lawyers are expensive, so we'll either need to find some legal folks who are interested in becoming part of our community, or we'll need to allocate some of our funds in that direction eventually. So definitely keep your ears and eyes open for that kind of thing. Anyone else on the subject? We kind of got away from the strategic side of things and more into like the legal liability regulatory side, but that's fine. I want to take it back just for a second onto the strategic discussion that we were having earlier. Does anyone have any more thoughts there? Do we want to discuss that a little bit more? Or are we good with kind of seeing where things develop in the short term with these networks like Swell and SSV?
I was just wondering, like you talked about starting maybe on a certification process. So what kind of certifications will that be then?
Great question. So I have started work on creating a document that will describe what the certification process looks like. I'll go ahead and post that in general. Right now, it's not quite ready for comment, so don't go in and scream at the numbers or freak out at anything yet, because this is very early on. But you can see in here the idea behind NOAA membership certification is at minimum the what I was thinking about from a technical standpoint is we need to ensure that node operators that are part of our system you're not just reputable, but you're also performant, and we can use various on-chain metrics to determine whether or not your validators are that. And at the same time, we need to another big question, another big problem for a decentralized network of node operators like this is trying to understand what kind of bond is necessary to, or is there a bond necessary to keeping people behaving well, basically. We know from a technical level, we probably have a pretty good way of keeping people from stealing funds. Unless there's a problem with the process or contracts or security issue, that would be a separate thing. That would be more like a bug. From a strategic standpoint, technically, we can just have all the validators set to our multisig, and that would definitely keep people from stealing funds. But what it doesn't do is keep people from, turning a validator off and just walking away. So there's a few different questions in here that are still unanswered. I haven't written them down in here. I've just kind of started jotting down some notes in this document here. But if you have some ideas about what the certification process should entail, I'm going to have to mute you. Sorry. You can unmute yourself if you need to. I'm just getting some background noise. If you have some thoughts about what the membership certification concept process should look like, definitely post that into the P&O reputation system channel. That's what we've got set up to talk about this. I think this is going to be pretty crucial for pretty much any product that we put out, because we need to be able to prove to people, any of our partners need to be able to look at this and say, oh, this is what I can expect from the network as a whole. We have 24/7 uptime promises, or we have full, availability or full effectiveness of nodes. We know that they're going to be at least 97% effective, or at least 95% effective before they get kicked out or something. I think that this is a good, rough draft, essentially what I've gotten down here, but I'd really like to see what the community thinks about the direction we should go here, and some of the, poke some holes in this and say, what if I'm a bad actor? What if I want to hurt things? How do I hurt things using this framework that's set out? I think this is a good conversation starter. So if you have any thoughts on this, speak up now or post later in the P&O reputation system channel. Does that answer your question a lot?
Yeah, definitely. Thanks.
Mm-hmm. Anyone else have any stuff to say on the idea of certification before we move back? Okay, not a problem. We can come back to this. either later today or at another call in the future. So I'm going to give people just another quick chance to mention something about strategy before we move on from there. Any thoughts on strategic updates, changes, ideas?
Yeah, I'll make just a kind of a broad comment about strategy. I'm kind of a firm believer in terms of just building something as quick to market as possible and not being afraid to sort of change strategy and pivot where it makes sense to do that. And in pursuit of that, I think it makes sense to just take a temperature of what value we bring to the market versus where are we kind of behind our competitors. And I think what I would say is that I think what we bring to the market is first and foremost a huge community of node operators that are really high quality. And it's a very sort of engaged and talented community. There's a lot of network effects that are along that community, and they're not afraid to take on things, branding, marketing, business structuring. You know, I think we can kind of run the gamut of kind of being an enterprise kind of shop with the skills that we have. And where we're probably behind is a little bit more of the technology layer, the auditing, the sort of infrastructure side of things. And you know, acknowledging that, I think it makes sense to have our technology layer be sort of thin as a result, and to maybe kind of hook on to an existing platform or platforms and be an extension of those rather than the original strategy, which is going kind of like full V1 MVP where we build a liquid staking token and things like that. So like, I just wanted to point out that I think a lot of the value we bring in the near term is really driven by this community and what we have and the network effects that go along that, which I think lends itself to doing something a little bit more kind of community oriented and less kind of tech heavy.
Yeah, that's a great point. And, you know, to that tech heavy strategy, we can build there too. We don't necessarily have to do that instantaneously. We can do both. You know, we could start with the stuff that we're really good at now, and then down the line, once we've sort of built up the resources and the expertise and you know, the research really to make sure that we're doing it right, we can still go down that route. There's certainly nothing preventing us from do that. So.
Yeah, totally agree. I didn't mean to imply it was like either or, but more of a question of where do we prioritize our first kind of efforts in terms of building a product. But yeah, totally agree.
Yeah, actually, that's a great way to put it. Priorities really is the thing. You know, I think we can do a lot of different stuff, and that's the really brilliant thing about having such a passionate and talented and big community, that we can you know, tackle multiple things at the same time. You know, I do think that, you know, to stay productive, we're going to need to, you know, going back to the formality and the structuring, we'll have to do some work there. But from a strategic standpoint, you know, we could tackle multiple things at the same time as long as we had people dedicated to it. But, you know, having these things in the short term that we can look towards to say, you know, these are definitely going to play to our strengths. These are definitely going to get us the, you know, to our short-term goals quickly. Yeah, I totally agree with you that, you know, our big strength right now is our community, and, you know, maybe eventually we build up a big strength of technology, or we build up a big strength of, you know, security or whatever else we decide to go in long term. But these are sort of long term initiatives, and, you know, in the short term, I think we can provide a lot of value right now. Anything else on the short/medium term strategy, I guess? So when I say that, I'm thinking, you know, next 6 months to a year, maybe a little bit or less than that. Okay, well, no problem. If you, again, just like with the DAO stuff, if you feel like it's relevant, you have some more thoughts, or you just, you know, something pops into your brain later, speak up. But for now, I'll go ahead and move on. The next thing on the list of topics that I had for today, I wanted to just do some brief summaries of the meetings that we had with the SSV network team, Rocket Pool, and yesterday we spoke with James. I think I already mentioned that from the Ethereum Foundation. We also have another call that we're a part of, which is it's not a public call, and so I don't really want to go too deeply into what it is, but it is a group of people that is really essential to the staking space, the Ethereum staking space. And so we're really plugged into some very influential folks there that are excited and interested to see us succeed. And I'll share details from those as we can, but unfortunately, I kind of just have to keep that high level for now, just to not betray any confidences here. But so let's go back to the stuff that I can talk about. The meeting with the SSV network, I think it went really well. Nick and Marceau were on that call with me. I think that was last week. And we spoke with a couple of the folks from that team, and they seem to be building a very interesting product. I was motivated to set aside some time to look into running a test node and figuring out what their testnet product looks like. I haven't gotten very far with that, so I can't really speak to what that experience looks like. But from the way that they sort of described the high level of their product, it's very interesting. Nick or Marceau, do you want to jump in and give your perspective on this, so I'm not just dominating the conversation?
Marceau, did you want to jump in?
Give me 1 minute. Go ahead, Nick.
No, I thought it was a very super interesting call. Clearly they're driving forward pretty aggressively, and I thought it was interesting that they are. And correct me if I'm wrong, Mike. They're looking to build a full sort of rating system similar to Rated.network, and I believe, like Swell, they were also considering operating a sort of marketplace of various operators. And what they mentioned was that if the Node Operator Association was interested, they could essentially add us as a whitelisted sort of meta entity where someone could select us as a service provider, and the funds would be sent to us, and if we had the right infrastructure, we could then distribute those funds to all of our participants. And of course, we'd be benefiting from all the redundancy provided by SSV's DBT technology. So I thought it was pretty cool.
Yeah. Marceau, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, I have a little bit of a hard time, admittedly, separating SSV the network versus DBT the technology, and I also want to spend some time just kind of digging around, playing around with kind of the SSV product. I have a server that's running it. I just haven't spent much time to kind of learn about it. But what I took away from that call is that they're really kind of building a community of operators, like you said. And what they're doing kind of behind the scenes with DBT is distributing the validator keys across multiple entities, which allows you to do a couple of things which are really value add to the providers that are sort of taking in ETH and running validators. It lets you have a really high certainty of not being slashed because you've got, say, 8 participants that are validating every attestation to make sure that you're not doing something crazy like double attesting. So it's really almost impossible to get slashed. It's also, for the same reason, pretty impossible to be offline, just because if any single participant is offline, you've got something like, the majority that are still online. So you have a lot of protections against maliciousness, slashing, and being offline and just low performance that come for any particular operator. And what that means, I think, for the protocols that are built on top of this is that really reduces their risk dramatically. So they can take sort of reasonable trust assumptions and have a higher certainty that things are going to fall apart. And so it really clicked for me in the call why organizations like Lido are so keen in this technology, having sort of a shared model of trusted providers and untrusted providers. It lets you kind of democratize some of the trust assumptions across multiple different providers. But I could see that kind of playing to us in the sense where we could have semi-trusted operators that we then share keys out to and participate in SSV network as an example. But I don't know how the details and the technicals kind of come together, but I just thought the kind of foundational thing of reducing risk, which allows you to take some limited trust assumptions on without things kind of falling apart, was really interesting. So I'd be keen to learn more about what does that mean to the platforms that are built on top of it.
Yeah, for sure. There's a lot of unanswered questions actually surrounding some of this technology because none of it's really on mainnet or in the market really truly yet. And so I think that 2 years from now we're going to look back and say, whoa, SSV or DVT really is kind of a big game changer for staking, and it really is going to help decentralize things significantly. Some of the questions that we've been asking technologically. How do we do this? How do we do that? If you remember, I asked earlier, as part of this certification process, we need to figure out how we can prevent people from being bad actors, or even just lazy actors and having their machine be off for days at a time. That's kind of becomes less of a problem. It's the power of decentralization. If you give everybody like a lot more people a little less power for each person, but each individual still gets the benefits of contributing to the system, then the system as a whole becomes a lot more resilient. And that's a very exciting thing for staking, because right now, as everyone sort of probably on this call already knows, the Ethereum staking landscape is fairly centralized due to its nascent nature technologically. But I think that as time goes on, groups like NOAA can use DVT and potentially working with networks like SSV.network or potentially OBOL to create the kinds of distributed and decentralized solutions that we really need to make Ethereum very healthy. And in the process, we all profit. So I think it's a win-win for really everybody. I was very excited to talk to them because of the things that they mentioned, as well as just sort of seeing behind the curtains a little bit. Where are they? How close are they to release? And how what do these things look like? They have a very big team. I think they mentioned they have like 40 people working on SSV network, and it's great to see the level of dedication that they have towards it. They've been working towards it since the genesis of the Beacon chain. They told us that they'll be releasing relatively soon. I think they mentioned basically like within the next month or two is their goal for releasing the sort of next version of their product. And this one will be released to mainnet instead of testnet. So I'm very excited to see what happens with that. I think they have a very robust roadmap, and I'm not quite clear on what is going to be coming out and released on mainnet soon versus what is sort of just future development. But I'm very excited to see what that looks like, and it's great. They seem to be very interested in working with us, so that bodes well for the future.
Yeah, well, I might just weigh in slightly and maybe add some questions that I think
Sure.
you guys should be asking. I semi kind of claim ownership of the term DVT because obviously this tech used to be called SSV.
Right.
Well, I mean, okay, let me take some steps back here. So I previously mentioned I work in Consensus, but what I didn't mention is around start of 2020, I was a contractor and worked for Block Demon, and I built out their ETH2 staking platform as well.
Oh.
And back then, yeah, and they keep their head fairly low, but they have a very large percentage of the network, if I'm honest. And I agree with the centralization concerns, if I'm perfectly honest. But so to give people on the call a bit more info where this came about, back in DevCon 2019, the Ethereum Foundation, basically like Don Crad and some of the researchers, knew that this tech was kind of possible because of the way BLS signatures work, and they originally called it trustless validators. And my co-founder Colin was basically in charge of the community side of things and was basically trying to drum up interest in kind of a team and people to work on this tech and to build this tech. And the SSV team kind of surfaced and were like, yeah, we'd like to build it. So that was, all good. They kind of started on it, and there was some community calls going on. This would have been December 2020, right at like Genesis, and that went on for a while. And then I'm a biased source, so you get this from elsewhere. But basically, they kind of were like, "Oh yeah, and the best part about this is it's all going to run on our ERC20 token as a fee token." And everyone was kind of unhappy with that, and it was kind of meant to be kind of an open source software for all the clients, and then it became kind of a run just this only like one client. It went from being additive to all of the existing clients to kind of competitive with them, and there was a bit of a falling out, and that was the point effectively where we were like, okay, we can't have only just one of these. We need more than one DVT client to have a bit of redundancy, because if there's just one, it's its own point of failure. So as far as kind of questions when it comes to, I think you hit the important ones, which was lazy operators. There's a lot of there's kind of I don't want to say the easy way and the hard way to figure out lazy operators, but there's the idea of, do you make an Oracle role that, is their job is to rate and reward operators. And it's actually, if I'm honest, one of my criticisms of Rocket Pool's design is the Oracle, the ODAO approach. But that's, more or less like what you have to do at the moment, because, well, right now the beacon chain and the EVM aren't linked, so there is no way to prove what a validator is doing to the EVM other than, having an oracle. um, and then similarly within a distributed validator, you need, there's talk of using oracles to kind of report on who's doing what. But there's effectively some like kind of further research. I think you're right, really, at looking at this as kind of a 1-2 year out tech for the really decentralized variant. How we talk about it internally is we talk about it in V1 and V2 terms. So V1 is what we call a trusted distributed validator. And what this means is you run it with people you know. So you and, three people that are effectively doxed or you trust, you run it together. And if somebody's lazy, you hit them up a Telegram, you ring them, you give out to them. The actual, protocol itself doesn't have the means to figure out who's honest and who isn't. And this works sufficiently well for basically the large providers, because that's kind of where the current problem is. And you talk about the Figment, Blockdaemon, Coinbase, Consensus, etc., having huge amounts. They are all keen, and Lido as well, to use DVT, and they are okay with using, out of band reward and punishment. But the real, maximally decentralized vision for this is something closer to Rocket Pool, which is purely crypto economic. You can just show up, you post a bond, you take part in distributed validating with people, you didn't know before you got paired up. And, if you're underperforming, you lose, your stake. And if you're performing, you get your cut. Um, the snag of this is proving it objectively without, one person like rated storing terabytes a year of people's vote history to try and kind of aggregate and, produce proofs. The way we're going about it is probably closer to like a zero knowledge kind of non-interactive proof that you took part. But that's kind of like the longer term thing. In terms of most practically, where I think DVT makes sense for something like NOA is, you guys, more or less are a trusted group amongst yourselves. Like, you wouldn't, run this with people you don't know, but you could be like, oh, come stake on NOA. We do this in clusters of 4, so we're all, professionals, and we are not, your ether isn't, custody by any one person, and if any one person underperforms, your ether is fine. The the last two kind of things to talk about it would be the key generation side of things. I haven't talked to the SSV guys in a while, but their previous approach was having a customer shard a key and distribute it over the Ethereum network, which is not great, because if an operator loses the key that it's encrypted with, basically every validator that was running on this operator is now gone from, let's say, a 4 of 3 down to a 2 of 3. Sorry, as in like all of one operator's private keys could become transparent if they lose the key that they're encrypted with. So yeah, I guess I don't want to talk too long about it, and I think we're going to chat again in a week or two about it. But the key generation and the rewards and punishment are still fairly nascent, and over time it will, the goal is to get towards kind of rocket pools of level decentralization. But in the near term, it's closer to, run it with 3 people you trust, or, run it between 4 companies with a legal service agreement together that, you can take each other to court with if, it doesn't work properly. Because the ungameable, provable crypto economic version is a bit early yet, in my mind. Not to mention the whole thing is early. Neither of the 2 teams are on mainnet yet. We're just still running on testnet.
Yeah. Well, actually, thank you so much, by the way, for joining. I, I actually have a quick question for you. I'm okay veering off topic for a second, but since you're talking about OBOL, I wanted to ask. You mentioned the V1, V2 stuff. I'm assuming that you have a date in mind that you're thinking that you'll get V1 to mainnet.
Yeah, the dream is DevCon. We're trying to do we're trying to do Gnosis Chain in September for DAppCon, which is like Gnosis's conference,
Hmm.
and hopefully that's skin in the game. It's $200 or $300, so it's nothing too important. But the goal is to be near code complete on Gnosis Chain into audits, all that good stuff, and kind of the September October range, so that at DevCon we could say December or so when audits come back type of thing.
Hmm.
That's our aspiration, I guess. For a V1 though, we,
No, sure.
we we don't do rewards and punishments intentionally because I think right now that they're I just I don't really like oracles if I'm honest. I don't I know everyone here is comes from Rocket Pool, but 2.5% of RPL tokens for oracles I think was not great.
Hmm. Yeah, I'll say from my perspective as a Rocket Pool node operator, that was the very first question that I asked actually on the Rocket Pool Discord. I didn't do anything else other than come into the Rocket Pool Discord and say, why do oracles need to exist? This sounds like a big weakness of the system. And of course, at the time, I didn't really quite understand the limitations of the beacon chain and EVM, and connecting the two and how difficult that has, the implications there. And um, today I understand it a little bit better. Like you said, we have some technical limitations that prevent us from not having oracles, basically. So oracles
Yeah.
to say it in the correct way, not the double negative. Oracles are necessary today due to the technical limitations of the beacon chain, but that may not always be the case, and hopefully it won't. I think there's a lot of momentum building in the Ethereum community, especially in the staking community, to say we need to get these technical limitations ironed out so that we can decentralize further. That actually seems to be a big theme that I've found from talking to all the different staking groups and all the people involved in this space is we're still so early technologically that there's sort of some limitations that are transitory. Like they won't really be the case in 2 years, 3 years. And things that look really centralized and bad right now are kind of many times they're sort of done as like the least bad solution that we can come up with, and that's not to excuse Lido's comfort with having a super majority, or a large amount of ETH staked through their platform, because that is certainly there's like a governance risk involved in that, and everything else. But at the same time, Lido's not an actor that wants to hurt Ethereum. They I think are a little bit more ambivalent than I would like them to be, but they they are trying to work long terms towards these technologies that will allow us to be more decentralized and allow them to be more decentralized too. So um, that's great to hear about Obal. That to get that timeline in there. That's really neat because I was very excited about talking to you guys in a couple weeks here about what that what your product is going to look like and how we can fit in with that. I think it does look very similar to the way that we're viewing some of the other networks, but you have the unique aspect of the DVT side of things, and just like SSV, there is a benefit that NOA can provide out the gate because we can do our own trusting internally. Like you were saying, we can use this certification process. We can pair people together. We can use our own reputation system inside of our own system to sort of overcome or at least minimize the issues that would arise in a trusted DVT scenario. And so I think that we're definitely a fit for the V1 that you're looking to launch in the end of this year. So that's great to hear.
100%. You hit the nail on the head of our logic is that the kind of trustless, forever machine of kind of crypto economics is not as urgent as one that works for, people that know each other and, want to decentralize stake. So that was one of the main reasons why we kicked all of that complexity out of scope. And I think you're also very accurate saying 3 years from now, the kind of tech debt you don't have to pick up would be huge.
Hmm.
Like I've been kind of trying to do this since 2020, and yeah, the compromise you have to make. The problem is I don't think all of them will throw out their tech debt. I think there'll be basically I think we'll see another generation of staking products come live with the withdrawal, so like the Capella fork, not the merge, because that's when you can get Ether out, and it's also, well, come the merge, you'll be able to make proofs against the state root. But I think for things like NOAA and for lots of others, there'll be a real kind of window of opportunity to build something without the, overhang of oracles that need to get paid. Or like Lido spend a good bit of money pushing data to the ETH1 each week, just of how many validators they own and what are all their balances and stuff. I think I think there'll be, yeah, I think the question is, will the existing ones improve, or will new competitors, be able to, compete because they have fewer constraints than, the ones that set up at Genesis had?
Yeah, actually, that's a great question, and I'm very excited to see the future of staking protocols. It seems very clear from my perspective, as somebody just speaking to a bunch of these teams out there. Everyone's super passionate and has these really big plans for the long term. And of course, even if just 1% of these plans worked out, then the chain would be significantly better. So I'm really excited to see all this technology mature over the next few years. I do think that NOAA has kind of a unique opportunity here, like you were saying, kind that once, especially I'm also especially excited for some of the recent proposals. Rocket Pool put up the ejection balance increase proposal. There's Vasily is from Lido is really pushing hard for the forced exits via the 0x03.
Mm.
And whether that form of that goes through or not, that is still another huge piece of tech that NOAA could potentially use to develop a protocol that has less weaknesses essentially than the current generation. And
For
combined with
sure.
DVT and it just we can really take things to the next level. So it's very exciting times. This is just kind of a to bring it back to the biz dev stuff that we've been sort of talking about here. That's just been a kind of a general theme throughout talking to pretty much every team. I've been really, I've always been, an Ethereum bull. I've always been excited about this space. It's got the most development out of all the chains, but also it's just has the most interesting community, the most technologically adept community, very passionate and interesting people who are, I see Nashua is on the call. You're one of my favorite people to talk to about what could go wrong with something. And that's, you don't get that on other chains. A lot of times you get, the copium and et cetera, et cetera. And so, that what I've seen is this translates to all the teams that we've spoken to so far. They all do seem to be very passionate about building the right kind of technology and they all have slightly different approaches because they're different people and they have slightly different ideas of what they think will be successful in the long run. But this is exactly what Ethereum is about, is, this sort of marketplace of ideas. And, we have multiple backups in case one thing doesn't work out for whatever reason. I'm just in general very, very happy with the level of engagement that we've seen across the whole community. And so next up, I wanted to talk about Rocket Pool and the meeting that we had with them last week as well. But before that, does anyone have any questions to ask about the SSV network? Any comments? Just want to leave some time here. Or Obal, actually, since Kind is here and they're very similar, but perfect time to do it. Okay.
I think Kind just dropped.
Oh. Uh-oh. Okay.
No, I'm still about, but it's all good. We can chat more in future.
Okay. Cool. No worries. Well, if you do have any questions, as always, I'm going to say this for every subject, but if you have something that comes up later, that's totally fine. Just throw it in chat or wherever else. So anyway, let's go back and talk about the Rocket Pool meeting that we had. So myself, Nick, and Brian. I don't think Brian was there, but we had a discussion with Darren from Rocket Pool, the general manager, if you don't know, and he outlined some of the plans that Rocket Pool has for a software. I'm sorry, I say it every time I try and say software as a service. It's staking as a service. He wants the Rocket Pool is trying to sort of build a, or they're at least at the moment ideating a maybe somewhere between ideating and building a layer for staking as a service providers of all types, not just people like NOAA, but also individuals, also much larger organizations. Rocket Pool is very interested in creating something that's going to be kind of universal. And one of the big things that Darren kept saying over and over was, we want to make every type of business that is possible to build on top of Rocket Pool. We want to cater to everyone equally. So they don't want to play favorites. They don't want to say this type is better than that type, or we like this more. They want to be a very flat protocol, essentially, which is very consistent with the way that I've always thought of Rocket Pool. And I think they do a really good job with leaning into that protocol side of things. So, Nick, do you want to speak a little bit to some of the tech that we talked about a little bit? Do you? I mean, I could keep talking about it, but I feel like I should pass it off and we can get some different perspective on it.
Yeah, no. As Wander mentioned, they're looking to remain sort of business model agnostic, and the baseline functionality for sure includes allowing for deposits from various ETH investors, as well as RPL deposits, and he wants to create a sort of reference smart contract or set of smart contracts that allow you to sort of mix and match funds however you like, in a trust minimized, preferably totally non-custodial way. Yeah, I mean, at this point, he did share with us some different documents that I think we can share. Did we share those yet, Wander? I can't remember.
We did not. I was hoping he would share them publicly with the Rocket Pool server, but I think that, I mean, one thing that Darren mentioned is that we can share these, but we do have to say that these are work in progress and not finished. So since he hasn't posted them, I assume that means that they haven't done much finalization on them. So actually,
Yeah.
if you wouldn't mind posting those, that'd be great.
Yeah, I'll do that. I'll do that shortly after the call.
Okay.
But yeah, so he's, from my impression, they're still in the ideation phase, and I did connect Darren with the 0x Split team, the guys who built that splitter contract that allows for you to send rewards through a smart contract instead of your personal wallet, and then those funds are sent to various people who deposited, and there's a number of fancy gas optimizations that they've built to allow that to be done efficiently. So I'm hoping that the 0x Split team can work with Darren and the team to sort of accelerate their progress, or even maybe take up a good portion of the engineering on their side if it aligns with their long-term roadmap. So I'm excited about that. They just started chatting, and I think they're going to have a call in the next week or two. And yeah, so, and just for reference, the 0x Split contracts, I think, are sort of what Marceau used to help connect the various whales that we are expecting to see deploy their capital soon on the Rocket Pool protocol. So that's exciting, and yeah, I'm excited to see where we go with this. And I think that Darren's going to continue to solicit feedback from us in general, from our community, on what we want to see, and that's why I'm very keen on speaking more with our sort of legal folks, or maybe talking to Kind at some point about how we can ensure that we keep whatever we build as not necessarily compliant, but at least risk minimized from a custodial perspective. So it should be interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. This is some very interesting stuff that Rocket Pool is focused on. One of the big themes from our meeting with Darren was, both sides need to sort of figure out what are our plans, and then when we come together regularly in the future, which we did agree that it was probably a great idea for us to keep in contact and keep talking about this on a fairly regular basis. So our in the future, to be more productive and eventually sort of finally one day hooking together from a tech standpoint, it's going to take a lot of sort of like ideating and figuring out where do we sit, and then Rocket Pool is still doing some design work on this. And one of the nice things about knowing Rocket Pool and having a good relationship with them is that we're able to sort of influence or at least provide feedback. And so NOAA is not going to be left out, or our interests are going to be aligned here with whatever product they end up building. And I was very appreciative that Darren seemed very interested in building out a layer that was sort of, it doesn't necessarily have to be a part of the Rocket Pool protocol, but he knows that, and I think the whole Rocket Pool team is very aware that this is something that is crucial for the success of the protocol, even if it's not necessarily something that is part of the core protocol. And so therefore they're willing to take the responsibility of building that layer. And because they want to see it done right, and they want to make sure that whatever comes out there and ends up becoming the right way to hook into Rocket Pool is, they're willing to get it included into audits and things like that. So I was really, the big takeaway from me is that I was really struck by how committed they are to ensuring the health and success of the partners that want to build on top of Rocket Pool. By putting their own resources towards that. They could, it's very, very easy for a lot of protocols to just say, hey, be our partner, be our partner, be our partner, please build on top of us, and then provide no support whatsoever besides, hey, look at the docs, or, yeah, we'll explain some things to you and meet with you, but we're not going to build anything for you. Fortunately, so far, that has not been the feeling that I've gotten from pretty much anybody. Of course, this space is very new, and before I worked in crypto, I was a game developer, and gosh, it's hard to explain, but as a game developer, even working for a AAA studio, like a really big organization that makes tons of money and makes tons of money for your partners, you still don't get very good support. It's tough to, and I think that's true across a lot of the tech space in general. Is you'll get people explaining to you how the product works, but building for you, that's kind of out of the question. So that's one thing that I'm really, really excited about in general. This is another big takeaway, not just from the Rocket Pool meeting, but at large. The entire community seems very ready to build stuff into their products that they don't necessarily have to in order to accommodate us, which is really awesome. If let's keep that in mind for sure when we're doing our designs and stuff like that. We need to be thinking with the idea that people are going to be willing to, I wouldn't say bend over backwards, but they're certainly going to put some effort into making sure that they hook into NOAA. And that was certainly something that was evident from Rocket Pool as well. So I'm very excited on that front. Anything else to add there, Nick?
No, I don't think so. I think that covered it pretty well. As you mentioned, we're going to try and set up a more regular cadence with Darren, and just keep the dialogue going back and forth. And I'm sure at some point we can expand that audience if people like to join that. So
yeah.
Again, I will share what he shared from a document perspective shortly there after this call. But I'm very positive on the whole collaboration there.
Yeah, me too. Cool. So before we move on, any questions, comments on our relationship with Rocket Pool here? All right. Next up, I wanted to talk a little bit about, very briefly, about the support that we are receiving from a social standpoint from the Ethereum Foundation. We met again with James yesterday, who is a staking ecosystem researcher and who works for the Ethereum Foundation. And James, frankly, James is awesome. James is very dedicated towards helping this space succeed, and he sees NOAA as an integral part of that. We're something really unique. I mentioned before, Stakefish, Figment, Coinbase, Kraken, all these big staking players, they are all centralized. They're all trying to build their own businesses up, and they're not really doing it in any way close to the way that NOAA is approaching things. And there are some downsides. Like obviously, we're not nearly as productive as a team of 40 people who have centralized leadership, but in the long run, we're building an inclusive ecosystem that anyone can be a part of, and that's the super exciting for the Ethereum Foundation. That like really hits the philosophy for them. So they are very excited about supporting us. James is a great kind of liaison in general to the broader staking ecosystem. He knows everybody, and he is willing to introduce us to anybody. And beyond that, he's also very aware of some of the technical issues facing staking organizations, and some of the just not just technical issues, but the broader kind of large strategic issues that are faced by our kind of organizations. All of these, all this to say, having the support of the Ethereum Foundation it's not just the staking funding round that's going on right now. They didn't just like throw some money at the staking ecosystem and say, well, I hope you figure it out. It's not that at all. It's in fact, I would say that having the support of the Ethereum Foundation from a social perspective is far more important even than the funding that they're willing to provide, because they're connected and they're very aware of the problems that we might face. So the reason I bring all this up is to say that not only is James part of the community, you can ping him on our Discord, but if you have any questions for us, the team that meets either with him or with some other folks from the EF, we would be very happy to pass that on. In the future, we don't have anything scheduled with James again in the future, but if there's something we need from him, then we absolutely can reach out. So this is maybe a little bit more vague than some of the others, probably because it's more just sort of like background support. But I do want to stop here and leave some time for people to ask questions or comments here about our relationship with the Ethereum Foundation. So anyone have anything?
A general note, maybe for more the technically minded folks here. I know that technical partner on my team is interested in potentially working on some technical documentation around security and cloud setup, stuff like that. And I know that James is also thinking about putting together some technical documentation materials for the greater staking community. So if someone's interested in collaborating on that, working with James and maybe my team, if we end up doing that, then please let me know, or just reach out to James directly. So good collaboration opportunity to help the overall community.
Yeah, absolutely.
Quick question on the Ethereum Foundation,
Mhm.
and this is Danilo. I've been popping in and out, so I might not be fully read in, but I understand their purpose and their role, but have we promised, or is there any kind of implicit or explicit deliverables to them other than we are working to build this community and better decentralize Ethereum to staking?
Oh, that's a great question. I have not made any statements as to, we want to build, other than the extent of the way that we've phrased things so far has essentially been, we want to do X. And yesterday we spoke with James and we told him, what the biz dev team had, what we were talking about, in terms of strategy for the short term, maybe shifting a little bit. And, he was very supportive of that. And I think that in general, they don't really view, I could be wrong, but I'm fairly sure that the way that we've interacted so far leads me to believe that their role is more of a support role of, we want to encourage communities like this and see where they go. One thing that I think is really interesting about the Ethereum Foundation in general is that their researchers sort of play a multifaceted role. For one, they call themselves researchers, because they are first and foremost researchers. James had a slew of questions for us yesterday. He just ran through a bunch of them, and he was taking notes and just asking us and just saying, where are you at with this? What about this one? How are you thinking about this? What are you thinking over here? Are there any blockers for you with this? Have you talked to this person yet? What about this project? Have you heard of them? And these kinds of things are, I think, really illustrative of the way that the Ethereum Foundation sort of approaches the mission that they have. They don't do it in a sort of like, this is what we think is best way. Instead, they kind of go out there and they say, who out there is working on stuff that we like? It aligns with our values, decentralized, for the community, inclusive, technically competent. And how do we encourage that? Or at the very minimum, can we ask them, what's stopping you from growing further? What's stopping you from being more successful? And maybe the Ethereum Foundation behind the scenes can, go around and try to remove some of those blockers. But they're, the most direct support we've received from them so far essentially has been through the ETH Staker quadratic funding round, which is, really a very indirect thing. We had to apply for that. We had to go through a process. We had to, do a bunch of stuff, but none of it really promised anything. We put our own description of what we hope to build on the fund page, but we didn't ask James, what should we put up there? We wrote something that we thought made sense as a community, and so. To answer your question in a very direct way, I know I've been kind of beating around it a bunch, but I don't feel like we've promised any particular deliverables to the Ethereum Foundation. We've mentioned that we do have goals, and we've specified them, but we haven't said any dates. We haven't said this is the technical design that we're going with for sure. There's not really been any promises so much as there's been. Just providing them info and getting their support. And I've been very impressed with the way that they approach things. It seems very healthy, because, you could have the Ethereum Foundation be sort of like a top heavy centralized organization, despite all the talk of decentralization. They could be coming out and saying, nope, this is what's right for Ethereum, and we're only going to be working with projects that want to fall in line with these specifications. But they really don't do that. From my experience talking to every Ethereum Foundation member that I've spoken to so far, they're very much a, what kind of heavy lifting do you need to get done? And can we help you with that? And here's our perspective, as to what we think is best, but we recognize your autonomy, that kind of stuff. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, no, that's a great answer. And it sheds a lot more light. I know they exist, but I've never really read up or seen how they operate.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I look forward to being a little bit more active in this group. I like, this is my first call, and I think I like everything I've heard. I've actually read through the certification as you guys were talking. I'm reading in, so this is I'm excited to be here. Hopefully, I can help somehow.
Yeah.
Not big on technical, but I can help.
Oh, don't worry. There's plenty to do. So yeah, thanks. Very glad to have you.
Yeah, I appreciate your support.
Yeah. So the I do want to mention real quick, since you just said that the Ethereum Foundation is very in the background sort of, that's intentional from what I understand. They I try to keep up with some of their annual reports that they release and things like that. And the big theme that I always see everywhere is basically, Ethereum is their number one goal. And, technically and, from like an internal perspective, they focus everything they can on that. And all of their external relationships seem to be very supportive in nature. And they, just like Rocket Pool, don't want to try and, favor one type of business model over another. They just want everything to be viable because they want Ethereum to be as successful as possible without shutting anyone out of the system. So that's something I it's easy to pay lip service to some of these values. We see it happen all the time where people say, "Oh, we love decentralization," but then they don't act on it. I do think that the Ethereum Foundation is set up from a very core fundamental level to encourage that. Even when speaking to James, who more or less has been acting as our liaison to the EF and the broader staking community, he has been very clear to express that any opinions that he expresses are his own. And he says, this is how I feel about it. And he's mentioned sometimes this is how this other person feels about it, and I haven't developed an opinion enough on it, or something like that. And I think that really speaks to the integrity of the types of people that end up as Ethereum researchers. They're far more interested in gathering information and doing things in a decentralized way than they are in sort of dictating this is what needs to be done, or this is what we think is right. It's even a lot of the researchers you'll see on all core devs calls, those are devs and not all researchers, but a lot of the folks there will disagree a lot. And of course they don't work for some of the devs don't work for the EF, but if you want to see Ethereum Foundation researchers disagree, there are plenty of GitHub issues that you can look up for the Beacon chain, or for you can go look up at the EIP editing process is full of people saying, no, I think it should be done this way. No, I think it should be done that way. And somehow it still works at the end of the day. Nobody comes in and says this is how it must be done, but the people come to a consensus eventually. It's pretty cool to see in action. So it really just gives me a lot of excitement as to how things are developing. It seems to be going in all the right directions. Any other questions, comments on Ethereum stuff? I'm just kind of blabbing here. Okay, well, we can come back to it if it comes up. Last thing I wanted to bring up today is the ETH Staker funding round. Today is the very last day. It's only going to be active for another few hours here. So I really wanted to take the opportunity to get everybody who wants to be Bright ID verified and potentially walk you through donating if that's something that you're interested in doing. So what I'm going to do here in a second is post a group connection link to the general channel here. And what you can do is if this is your first time connecting on Bright ID with somebody, you just download the app Bright ID, and make an account. It takes a couple seconds, not very long, and then you can connect with someone, and you just choose basically whenever you're connecting how well you know the person already. Generally, if you have a relationship with somebody, you already know them and they know you. You want to select the I already know this person response. But it's really crucial that they pick the same, basically you pick the same one, because it helps with the algorithms for verification behind the scenes. So what I'm going to do when I post this group code, I'm just going to recommend everybody, and if you click on the link and you're not somebody that I DM with regularly, I guess, then go ahead and select the I just met this person. It's fine. I won't be offended. It's okay. But this will get you your first connection, and from there you can get connected with other people in this community, or you can join one of the calls to get verified that they do on Zoom every day. So I'm about to post that right now. Just give me a quick second here. It'll be in general.
Also, a big thank you to anyone who's contributed thus far.
Yes. Yeah. Huge thank yous. I do want to mention also, this quadratic funding round is far less about the amount you donate and far more about the number of people who donate. So if you donated $1, if you had one DAI and you put it in to NOA, that is a huge benefit. I mean, obviously more money is great. That helps us with our mission long term, but in the grand scheme of things, those funds will get matched, and then they will be matched quadratically, meaning that the large fund that the Ethereum Foundation has set aside for this will be divided among projects based on however many people are donating, not however much money is being donated. It's the people, the number of people who are donating. So even if you just have one die that you want to give us, or half a die, or I don't know, whatever the minimum would be. I definitely recommend taking the time. It's not a very long process to get connected on Bright ID and make it an Arbitrum wallet and just go for it. So I want to leave some time here. Does anyone have any questions about getting verified or donating to this? I have some other things to say about other stuff, but let's start with this.
Can you use your Rocketeer's profile photo on Bright ID?
Oh,
Or do you need to have like...
I don't think that you have to have a real human profile photo. I've seen quite a few that don't have a real picture, so you can just put an avatar there if you want.
Okay.
Does this work only on mobile?
Unfortunately, yes. And that's part of the Bright ID system, is that they basically they don't have a way to prevent bots via traditional methods because they don't want to keep your information. So instead, what they're trying to do is verify that you're a real person through algorithmic means, which means that, if you verified somebody who is actually a bot, then you'll be punished. Basically, you'll be less verified. And essentially, as you reach a level of verification behind the scenes, eventually you'll reach a threshold where the system will say, okay, you're verified. And so being on mobile is one way that they try to prevent bots from taking over the whole system.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
One day it might be useful for you to just let people know a little bit about what NOA will be spending the money that they get from the funding round on.
Great point. Yeah, thank you, Wack. So I'll just give a very brief overview. I'll say the same thing I said last time during the first community call, which is this money will not be going to me or Nick directly. We are in control of the multi-sig purely for bureaucratic reasons, but we're not going to be like trying to take a salary from this or pay ourselves. I'm even providing hosting for the NOAA website for free right now, just because it's like $1 a month or something like that. But the reason I say that is that what these funds are sort of going to be earmarked for is future development. And that means that, first and foremost, there's a lot of costs associated with, deploying a contract. If you don't know, that it can be kind of expensive. But there's also some random stuff too. We may need to upgrade the hosting to the point where I can't pay for it personally anymore. And in which case we may need to somehow pay for that using funds that are generated via donations. That's one example, but really there's a lot of like kind of ongoing random costs that can kind of come up as we develop as an organization more. One big one is that if we decide to go down the legal incorporation route, that has quite a bit of fees associated with it. The legal fees there can be many thousands of dollars. Just 20, 30, 40, 50. I've seen huge amounts of money sunk into DAO legal structuring in the past from some other projects I've been involved with. And that is an unfortunate reality of just the space that we're in right now. It costs a lot to do things right. So, down the line, it may get better, but that's not today. If we go down that route, then that would be a huge, initial thing that we could use the money for. There's also, the idea that we just go ahead and do some very basic tests of our certification program really early on with this money. And we can say, maybe we'll just change all of this money into Ethereum and then start distributing it to NOAA certified members as we develop that process. There's quite a few different things that could end up being targets for this money. But the reason I opened up with saying it's not going towards me, it's not going towards Nick, is that we're not here to, sort of profit off of this whole endeavor. We have our own businesses that we're focusing on in order to personally profit. NOAA is really much more of a community focused thing for everybody. We want to build a system that is inclusive and that everyone can be a part of, and that everyone can profit from. The Node Operators Association is really supposed to be an association. This is This is for you as much as it is for the moderators. The mods are here really to, I say this a lot, to try and keep people, you know, delineated essentially. The mods are not, you know, we don't have any sort of like special privileges other than, you know, keeping spam out of the server. So that's what we're here for. We're not going to ask for, you know, oh, we should be paid to, you know, moderate these calls or whatever. That's ridiculous. So, oh, it looks like I have a doppelganger in Bright ID. The one with my face is the correct one. I don't know what the Interesting. Actually, the other one was me because I took a picture of that piano piece that I was practicing. I don't know why that ended up as separate accounts. Huh.
From one phone to another.
It should be the same phone. I don't know. Not sure what's going on, but definitely the top one is the one that I've got the most connections working with. So, yeah. All right. Well, any other questions about funding or the quadratic funding round getting verified? Any of that?
While we're on this topic, I wanted to mention another project that the staking round, which is one that similar goal. Just thinking a lot about how do we get staking to be more decentralized. So I have this project, talked to Superfizz about it, encouraged me to move forward, which is to issue unique NFTs to as a way of rewarding, you know, actually operating nodes and being decentralized staking as opposed to, you know, just putting your money into depositing your ETH on the other side.
Leo, sorry, your mic is cutting out just a little bit. It's kind of quiet.
Let me see. Can you? One second. How's this?
That's a little bit better.
Okay, I'll also try to speak up. Yeah, so I was just saying that there's another project up there that I listed that I'm trying to get something for, which is to issue unique NFTs to people in the, you know, in the spirit of helping decentralize Ethereum. How do we reward everyone that's operating the node? So this would be, you know, everyone on this call would end up getting a unique NFT, kind of a symbol that, hey, I'm helping decentralize Ethereum. And this is something that would actually have a timeline over it. Like multiple NFTs would be issued over time, and they could be upgraded using ones. So you kind of have a tenure as well that builds into it. You get a little bit of a character progression the longer you're a node operator. Oh. So anyway, just wanted to mention that as another project on there if you guys are interested. And again, just throwing even a few die into it to help with the quadratic calculations there. And obviously happy to answer any questions about it. All the funding will purely go to the artist or the NFTs to create the NFTs. None of it's going to go to me or anyone else.
Cool. Yeah. Thanks for bringing attention to that. By the way, I'm very excited about this project as well. I didn't get a chance to respond to your post on Discord about it, but it's such a cool idea. I love the idea behind that. I totally agree that these are the kinds of ways that we should be trying to encourage people to do the right thing. Essentially, you know, I think I'm sort of a human optimist. You know, I think that people will do the right thing given the opportunity. And some people who may not do the right thing given the opportunity might just be pushed over the edge to do the right thing if given a little bit of an incentive there. So that's definitely a very cool project. Thanks for blasting that out. Definitely want to give a piece of support to that.
Appreciate that. And thank you, Nick.
Central. Yeah.
Thank you.
Cool. All right. Well, on the subject of funding, is there anything else that anybody wants to ask or discuss? We can do a quick walkthrough. I can try to at least of how to donate, but I think it's pretty straightforward. There are some guides on this site, but I'll stop for a second. Let anybody make a comment or question. All right. Well, hearing nothing, we'll move on. That's the list of topics that I had set aside to discuss with everybody today. I think we've made some, you know, really great discussion happen. I'm so glad that we recorded this one. I want to open up the floor now. I know this call's gone on for almost 2 hours now, but let's let's definitely set aside some time here to just kind of open up and chat about whatever anybody wants to talk about for a little bit. Last time we did this, we ended up talking a little bit about the problem of centralization on the beacon chain, and how Lido is, sort of controversial in that aspect. They don't really see it as a problem if they dominate the beacon chain. And one thing that we were discussing last time was, should we work with Lido? Should that even be something that we're comfortable doing? Personally, my opinion, I think, shouldn't dominate here. I'd like to know what the community feels, but beyond that, I want to open it up to any and all topics, not just beacon chain, not just decentralization, not just NOAA. Even if it's something staking related, now's the time. So ask some questions, bring up some interesting topics. The community is here. Let's do this for the next 15 minutes or so.
And real quick on the Lido topic, they did since then open up a governance discussion on the forums to discuss Vitalik's proposal, which is that if they had, for any protocol which has more than 15% share of liquid stake or total stake, they would keep raising their fees until it comes back down below 15%. So they've initiated that conversation, and I think they're going to open it up for discussion in the coming days. So feel free to join that discussion. Just letting everyone know.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. That's a pretty interesting aspect of how that whole discussion is going.
Two things. It's Danilo again. Just and I threw this up on the Rocket Pool Discord, but I think it's interesting, troubling, good, bad. I don't know how I feel about it, but pending validators has gone from its high of 18,000 pre-Luna debacle to 6,400 where it's at right now, and it's dropping every day, meaning the queue is getting lower. It's not that there is no queue, but we've definitely had some times where there was no queue. And this just again pushes out the dates where maximum number of validators can be accepted in a day gets pushed out. It just keeps pushing out that math if we're having any days that are not maxing out on validators. Just putting that out there as a topic of discussion. And the second thing, something that I do a little bit in my personal life, and I remember when I first joined the NOAA Discord, is, I focus a little bit on U.S. legislation. And there's a lot out there that could be impacting stakers, whether or not they are potentially broker dealers or money transmitters, in the eyes of government. So, I don't know where to put that kind of information if I come across it. I think I'd just throw it up on the Discord, but having something like this, like NOAA, which is not, one of the big three, Kraken, Coinbase, Lido, like entities with staffs of lawyers, might be useful for the community. So I'll do that until I'm told not to, but legislation can impact. And I know there's people from not the U.S. So I guess I also bring it up as I don't look at stuff outside of the U.S. If there is people or someone that knows or sees or comes across legislation in the EU or Australia or anywhere else where people are from, it doesn't really matter. I think that should be popped up on a channel on NOAA. Just call a senator, write a congressman. It actually does do a fair amount of work on the retail lobbying side.
Danilo, I'm super interested in talking to you in more detail about this. I mentioned earlier that I may be engaging with lawyers to try and figure this out in more detail for U.S. specific node operators. And yeah, I think we can certainly create a channel for the topic. It's worth discussing on a recurring basis. And let's chat later.
Yeah, great. There's definitely some resources like Coin Center out there already, but I think a ground, what's the word? Not the ground. Whatever, a homegrown like retail movement would be, I think, has a different punch than a Coin Center or a lobbyist from Coinbase.
Yeah, I applied to join the Proof of Stake Alliance, which is a lot of legal folks, mostly coming from, I think, larger institutions. They, no response. I don't think they care about some random like me, but at some point maybe the NOA could apply if we, if and when that
That
is
sounds
deemed
cool.
appropriate. Yeah.
I think that sounds cool. All right, cool, man.
Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah, I'm really glad you brought that up. This is something that wasn't on the agenda for today, but it is something that people have in general expressed interest in the past. Is the staking industry at large is because it's dominated right now by large for-profit entities. There's not as much of a grassroots movement, and NOAA does represent one of the first steps in that direction. And there's been a lot of appetite for us to be engaged on the regulatory front, both for and on the behalf of individuals, but also as an association, to try and figure out what some of the complexities surrounding staking are from a regulatory perspective, in a lot of these different jurisdictions. And we have so far had a lot of our efforts be U.S. focused, simply because a lot of the people that come here are from the U.S. A lot of the people trying to found businesses and whatnot. But I do think that this isn't related to just any one jurisdiction. This is sort of a universal problem that any staking business will have everywhere. Is dealing with the regulatory side of things is going to be, it's not a wild west. I mean, maybe it is today, but it's certainly the frontier aspect of things. Means you could easily run into a trap and get hurt, if you don't do things carefully and correctly. So yeah, if we could set up a channel for this. I mean, I'm personally kind of thinking we have a lot of channels that already. But if if people are really passionate about this, we can make another channel for it. But I would say it's fine just to put it in general or put it in the P&O chat, because it's very relevant to professional node operators. This is the kind of thing that we all definitely do want to see. So very happy for you to provide anything that you come across, any articles or legislative resources, regulatory stuff.
Cool. Who was the other person that was speaking? And this is Wanderer that was just speaking, right?
Yes, yeah, I'm wondering. So that was just Nick.
Nick.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Nick,
I'll
all right,
I'll
cool.
PM you. DM you. Yep.
Cool.
And we can keep in general for now. Then I foresee the topic growing in complexity and importance over time, and if and when that happens, we can maybe spin up another channel. But for now,
Yeah,
P&O is fine.
absolutely.
Cool.
Anything else? We've got about another 10 minutes that I've set aside here today. I mean, I'm not going to shut down the call or anything. I'm just going to say I only have another 10 minutes. Any other big topics? Any Ethereum level topics that people want to talk about? One thing I mentioned before, I'm a big gamer. Used to work in the game industry, still play tons of video games. I would love to dive into at some point. I don't know if anybody else here is really into this space, but I run Linux. I run Arch, by the way, and have always been just very impressed by the direction that the Proton project has gone. That's been sponsored by Valve, but they're an open source project to get basically like to try and get Linux compatibility for games that come out and do it as quickly as possible, basically. And I noticed that, for example, I started playing this game last week that didn't have any Linux compatibility whatsoever. It was made for Windows. Yeah, it didn't work at all. Kind of sucks. All right, fine. I boot up into Windows and play this game. But today I noticed I woke up to a headline that said, newest beta of Proton has support for this game. It's called V Rising. If anyone's playing it, let me know. It's a ton of fun. But the reason I bring it up here is that I think it's actually a really interesting sort of case study for us to look into and say, how is this project so efficient? Is it purely relying on the community to come in and say, we really want this game to be supported and it's not right now? Or are there like a centralized group of developers that are sort of like dedicated to this that Valve provides? I know that there are a few, but it seems like they work way too quickly. So I thought that this would be something really interesting to look into for the future, to see like how the Proton project is able to so quickly get support for games that were not built for Linux. It's not our wheelhouse at all, but the structure there and how they're able to be productive with free and open source software might be kind of instructive for our project as well. Does anyone have any insight into that at all? Or am I just way out here? Okay, maybe this is something crazy, but worth looking into if or if you know of any other open source projects that are really big and you think are very productive and well organized. This is, I think that NOAA could learn a lot from that. So we'd love to, if you have a favorite open source project, Blender's a really great one. They've done a ton of projects or a ton of progress recently. But
maybe it's worth reaching out to them at some point if you want to talk to any big contributors there, get their insight.
Yeah, and if anyone just happens to have a favorite open source project that they think is really well organized and just does a really great job, people that we're not already connected to, like Rocket Pool, then just let the biz dev team know, and we'll reach out to them. Oh, actually, on that front, I keep meaning to say this, but if you want to be a part of the biz dev team and you want to make some of these connections and you want to be on these calls and meet with people, it's not gated or anything. We're not trying to keep people from it. So if you want to be a part of it, all you got to do is go to the FAQ, and there's a little thing at the bottom there that says Probot. You just click the little handshake emoji, and that'll give you access to our biz dev scheduling channel. And that's where we try to, sometimes we do things in DMs, but if you want to be a part of meetings in the future, especially with anyone in particular, let's say you're really interested in talking to Obal, or you're really interested in talking to Swell, then, just post there, and we'll make sure that you get cycled into these meetings. I really don't want to develop a culture where we sort of like gate off people from interacting with this stuff, because I think that's sort of how that's a centralization vector. So if you're interested at all, then please do make it known. We'd be happy to have your perspective in these calls. All right, so we've got about 5 minutes left. Any other random topics to bring up?
I have a quick comment/question. Last time when we had this community call, I think it was myself or someone else asked about like a high level understanding of a node operator would look like under NOAA. And the answer I got, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is like you deposit 16 ETH, you set up your node, you set up all the withdrawal information and like the all the emission stuff from that to the contract, like the NOAA contract. And then once that's all set up and it's all verified, then you get your 16 ETH back, and you could basically do that process over and over again ad infinitum. Since then, there's been a lot of talk on Rocket Pool Discord about the lesser bonded nodes, like with either 6.4 as collateral, or some of us here support the 4 ETH collateral nodes. How would that impact things like setting up a node through NOAA? And also in the credentials, it said that the max validators per person might be 100. Would those lesser bonded nodes validators impact that? Would it like increase the threshold, decrease the threshold? Has there been any discussion about how that might impact us here?
Great question. I haven't discussed it with anybody, but I can give you my thoughts. If anybody else wants to jump in, feel free. I'm fairly sure from a technical perspective that lowered collateral for Rocket Pool would just directly translate to lowered collateral required for us too, if we're building on top of Rocket Pool. So if Rocket Pool changed to use 4 ETH, then we could set up a bond of 4 ETH instead. That's for Rocket Pool in particular. Now, It's worth mentioning that if we do any integrations with other networks like Swell or SSV or whatever we come up with OBOL or any of the number of different staking protocols that are out there that we may integrate with they're all gonna have sort of different requirements and different technical environments. So SSV network, for example, will probably have a situation set up where you could do DVT internally with other NOAA members, and that might actually require far less. That could require maybe 1 ETH instead. But I don't know what their system is set up like. We haven't done enough research there to really know for sure, or at least I haven't. But I think I can say broadly that whatever the staking protocols do at their level will sort of just directly translate to benefits on our end too. We can reduce the requirements, for everything that we do, which is a huge benefit. It's great. It's something I'm really looking forward to in the future.
Thanks for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just a general comment.
You are super quiet, Rare Bunny.
Oh, sorry about that. Let me try that.
Oh, that's a little better.
Cool. General comment. Just, do we have any notes regarding like meetings with Swell? Was there any knowledge aside from just verbal pass down of that knowledge? So one of the strengths of having an organization is that sharing of information.
Yes, for sure. So we talked about it a little bit on the last community call, but unfortunately that was not recorded. Of course, we hadn't really gotten it together yet. This one will be recorded, so I'll go ahead and just say some of the stuff that I remember from the last one. Maddie from Swell is, or wait, actually Maddie's from SSV, but there was from
Lecky.
What's that?
I think Swell's Lecky is one of the Swell guys.
Lecky and
Lecky's
and
the
Daniel. They're not here today, but they are. We had great calls with them, and the big takeaway for me was that they are hoping to release in the next month or two, and their product will initially be a sort of market-based staking approach that we kind of described earlier in this call, where a staker can kind of choose the validator that they want to partner with and put their stake onto. And that's I think a really great opportunity for NOAA. We can integrate with that and say we are a staker or we are a validating organization that you can choose to put your ETH with us. One of the big things I think NOAA has as a value add for everyone is being able to compete with centralized services by just purely saying, hey, we meet the same requirements. We have the exact same back-end requirements for our nodes that Figment or Coinbase or whoever does, but we're decentralized, so we're healthier. We have many more nodes behind the scenes. That I think is something that we could potentially put to the test with Swell pretty soon, and maybe help get NOAA off the ground by partnering with them. We do have a meeting coming up with Swell. I believe I'll have to check my schedule here. Yeah, it's next week today. And it's just sort of what we called initially in the first meeting, which was more of a meet and greet and just like saying hi and getting to know each other and what we're trying to build. But this next meeting is focused on trying to sort of ideate at a really, really high level to say, what can NOAA and Swell potentially do with each other? How can we partner? What would be the best and most interesting, unique, coolest ways that we could combine our forces, and what would that look like? Let's leave aside, practicalities like how do we pay for it and things like that, and just sort of ideate at a really high level and throw together just some ideas about how the two protocols or the two communities could come together and create something great. So if you're interested in being a part of that, like I just mentioned with the biz dev stuff, we would love to have you. If we get to a point where there's too many people participating just for the sake of productivity, we might have to sort of have like a selection of folks that are actually talking on the call and then take questions, or stream it somehow. We're kind of working on this as we go because I've never moderated a decentralized community like this before. We're still very early on, but yeah, this next one, Rare Bunny, thank you for bringing this up. I do want to get a lot better about recording calls, and so that at the very minimum, even if notes aren't taken or something like that, there will always be a call that you can go back to and take a look at it and say, oh, I missed this, or I missed the summary. What happened? Being open is really important to me. I think that's kind of a core value of everybody here. So we're trying to get a lot better about recording things and figuring out how to get that together. It's just this is new, and a lot of us are not really used to recording calls that we make, so hopefully the OBS recording that I'm making of this one will work, and if it doesn't, then I'm sorry, but I think it's working. So we'll find out after the call once I compile it into something and post it. But yeah, I really do appreciate that feedback. We're trying to keep that in mind and work towards a more documented BizDev setup for everything that we do.
Love it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions, comments? I've got to get going here, but I want to give y'all a chance to say something if you can. All right, cool. Well, I'm going to go ahead and close it out.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Yeah, thank you so much for being here, everybody. We really appreciate it. Your support is incredible. We love you. And
see you.
We'll see you on Discord.
Cheers. Take care.
Have a good week, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, guys.